Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Nexus Insights, where we're focused on having interesting conversations with authentic people. Super excited for our guest today, one of my great friends, Mr. Sam Alderson. He is going to be talking to us about who knows what, but I'm sure there will be some jiu-jitsu and some fun stuff. And I'm going to tell some fun stories about how he has bullied me for the past 6 years. So it should be a great time. Sam, thanks for coming on, man. Good to see you, buddy.
Yeah, good to see you guys. Good morning.
Man, thank you so much for being here. I do want to hop right into one of the questions I told you that I like to ask. But before I do that, this is my chance to put you on blast in front of the world.
Oh, no.
I got to tell the story of when I first started training jiu-jitsu. And Sam was a little blue belt at the time. And, I'm in, I think, week 2. And it's the first time ever in a gi training. And, I'm deciding, hey, I'm going to roll today. This is it. Yeah, I'm going to roll after class. I think this will be good. And Sam, being the I think, relatively newly promoted blue belt you were, like, come on, little buddy, over here. I've got you. And we start rolling. And again, guys, I know nothing about jiu-jitsu at this point in time. Like, I don't know anything. And this guy, within 3 seconds of us starting our friendly roll, hip tosses me into the ground. And I just remember thinking, where am I? And what just happened? Like, my feet had never in my life up until this point left the ground and been higher than my head. And I didn't even know like what a break fall was. It was a good time. So I have since then, Sam has, I would say is kind of like my much older brother in jiu-jitsu who I chase after. And I think in the couple hundred rolls we probably have, I've tapped him twice. And I think both of those are him letting me try to work a little.
No, you got me. You got me for real.
All right. Yeah. I remember the first time, dude. I just remember walking away smiling, but it's gotten to the point, guys, where like I've named my jiu-jitsu dummy Sam at home because like I want to train and be able to beat him. And I knew it was bad when one day I was talking with Katie and I was going downstairs to the garage to train. And I said something to the tune of like, I've got to train so I can beat Sam one day. And she's like, you're never going to beat him. It's just not going to happen. And so to hear my own wife basically talk about how I would never beat you in jiu-jitsu, that was fun. But anyway, Sam, I'm really excited to have you here, man. We've always had really great conversations. And I think you bring just a lot of really interesting insights. I mean, from the times that when we've spent talking on the mats to when we've been out hunting to just having you over at my house for fights, and just I always really respect. I think you bring a lot of wisdom, and you're kind of I can tell you spend a lot of time thinking about the things that are important to you, and so I'm really looking forward to seeing where this goes. But that's kind of where I want to kick it off. I mentioned to you how a question I've been getting more like not excited about, but just something I've been trying to ask people is, if you could share one idea or one thing that has made the biggest positive impact in your life and the whole world was going to hear that, what would that be?
Well, it's a good question. And I think the biggest positive impact for me would be the thing that really brought me out of the dark times in my life, when I had a really bad self-esteem, really bad relationship with myself, really beating myself up about a lot of mistakes, things I'd done wrong, things that weren't going well. And the one thing is, I think if anybody who needs it, who could hear it, who could learn it, is to learn to be a good friend to yourself and what that means. And to me, that really means like a good friend will be honest with you. So you should be honest with yourself. A good friend will help you. A good friend will notice when you're messing up, when you're falling behind, and they will kindly tell you, they'll kindly be in the word, like a friend, when you're fucking up, one of your friends will tell you if they're your real friend, and they'll come along and they'll say, hey man, I notice that you've been doing this thing that's hurting you, and I think that, we should get you some help. I think we should stop doing this. They won't lay into you, and they won't guilt you over it, and they won't beat you up about it. Like, you will just notice that you can beat yourself up. You can be like Jordan Peterson said, don't be a little tyrant to yourself either. So that's the one thing I think that has made the positive impact on me, is all the things you think of. If you're lucky enough to have had a really good friend in your life, and it should be that for yourself as much as you can. And it's still something I'm learning, still something I'm practicing, but it's gotten, it's gotten me a long way.
Well, and I feel like since we've known each other, I was talking to Katie about this, I think over this weekend, just as I knew this was coming up. And I was just I think it was after we met on Sunday for breakfast. And I was just telling her about like how I feel like I've got to, not know, but like we've known each other for a long time now. Like it's been like six and a half years since I've been training. And so I feel like I've watched you grow up a little bit, because when we first met, I remember where you were at, and, you and Sequoia just being a lot younger. And, it was before you went to on your fishing escapade where you did that for a while. It was before Remy was born. It was before a lot of things. And I've seen you mature a ton, both like, it's funny because I feel like when I first met you, you were like really scrawny. You're like, you need to, you're still growing into yourself, and you started taking your workouts more serious. I feel like you started taking your self-development more serious, and you have become, and even with your business, with what you've built and how you've used Instagram to where it's at, like I respect it a ton, because it's something that it's a very interesting line of work you're in. And maybe just as people are going to know you, why don't we talk a little bit about who you are, where you're from, what you're currently doing. And then I'd love to hear too, just, as you're answering that, like, it seems like that hasn't been by accident. And when I talk to you, it seems like you're constantly thinking and working on self-development. Like, where does that come from? And when and how did you start doing that?
Yeah. So one thing about the taking things seriously, that was one other thing a good friend does is they don't take you too seriously. They will, we can take ourselves too seriously sometimes, I think. And I am taking things more seriously, my career, my workouts, stuff like that. But I'm taking a lot of things less seriously too, I think, in terms of like the way, you're right. Like I chose the career, I chose to be an artist because I wanted adventures. I wanted to do something interesting. I wanted to be in charge of myself, and I wanted to have a cool life and just put cool things into the world, do cool stuff. I thought about joining the military before that. I think I would have liked that too. So yeah, I just wanted to do interesting things. And I'm from Montana. I've been here my whole life. I've lived in different places around the world. I've lived in Australia. My dad is from there. I lived in Argentina for a while. Moved around a little bit, Wyoming. Looked at some places, California, Oregon, stuff like that when I was little. But yeah, I mostly lived in Montana. And I got started in art, I would say kind of my whole life. Like I've always loved to draw, sing, play guitar. My dad taught me the guitar when I was really little, probably like 5, and I started playing music. And then I wanted to be a musician for a long time. I was pretty serious about music, but I can't sing worth a shit. I just terrible. Like I don't have I can play guitar okay, but I was like really don't have a natural gift for singing, which is unfortunate if you want to be a singer. So, but I've always found a way to express things, And let's see, that, led me through hating school. I hated every minute of school. I just couldn't stand it. And our current school system is designed to weed out people who don't follow orders, who don't quiet down and sit still, and who aren't good employees, aren't good listeners, aren't good at swallowing bullshit from people who are miserable, who hate their lives and they hate the kids, and they spend too much time around kids, so they act like children themselves, and a lot of them are miserable. I had a few good teachers, but couldn't wait to be done with school. All I ever did was doodle and draw in school anyway, and I found a way to get paid for making art. So it's kind of just a way to survive, in the world, I think.
And I know because doing glass blowing and, just the different art that you make, it's kind of an interesting avenue. I mean, how, I don't even know if I know, man. How did you start that path? Like where was the, like the origin of that and how did that come about?
Pretty funny story. I was like I said, I was really just on, you could call it like a wayward path, but I was like, I was exploring, and I was a kid. I was really open to experiences, and I found pretty young, like psychedelics, mushrooms, LSD, cannabis, all these things that had changed my perception about what reality was and opened my mind to things being a lot different than we see on the day to day. And so from, when I was probably 12, 13, 14, I started experimenting with some of those things and having some pretty profound experiences and seeing some interesting sides of consciousness and life that a lot of people never get exposed to or not until they're older. And then I met at a music festival here in town. There was this like crazy hippie dude who came through our camp and he was selling acid he he gave me some and then had a pretty interesting experience at that festival. And then I looked him up, I wanted to get in touch with him and like obviously for the like things that he had, but he also was a magnetic sort of character. Like you meet some people that are very charismatic in your life and they're mysterious and they challenge you in certain ways. And he was someone who would always kind of test people, and I like that about him. He was questioning your intelligence, and he wanted to know if you were real, if you were smart, and he would fuck with you and see if your ego is too big, if you couldn't take a joke, if you couldn't try to understand things about the world. And so I'd hang around with him.
Do you remember anything that he talked to you about, or like maybe some questions or like the tests that you're talking about?
He was crazy. He's passed away now. He died of a fentanyl overdose, and he became addicted to heroin at one point, and that was an unfortunate part of his character, but he knew so much about computers. He'd been to school for chemistry. Taught me, so what was the question again? Something that he would test, that he would ask me, or something that he...
Yeah, you just said that like he challenged you or like tried to see where you were intellectually, and I'm just kind of curious. If you don't, that's fine. I was just super curious about that.
He was a pretty well-read person, and he would recommend certain books. He wrote poetry. He would recite poetry. He would talk to you about books. He would ask you, if you'd read things. I'm trying to remember some of the things that he would read. I can't remember specifically. I just remember feeling like he was really smart and he wanted to teach people, but he didn't feel like most people cared enough to try to understand things, to listen or to learn. Like, he was just very interested in science, very interested in technology. He knew about computer coding, and he was on like all these, like, I wish he was still alive, because he knew so much about like the dark web and technology and where things were going in the future. He told me about like Bitcoin back in 2011. He knew about all this stuff. He was using it. He was part of a lot of just interesting worlds, and he would constantly, like, I think he was bored with how slow and how low the standards are in society just for life and education, and we just accept these narratives that we're told in school, and we're accepted the history, and we've accepted that we're only supposed to follow this narrow path. And he was so far outside of that I'd always felt like I'd been searching for acceptance that wasn't, because I was so rejected by like school and teachers and the regular straight and narrow path in life. I'd never really found anyone who was like, no, there's this crazy other side of things, where people are expanding their consciousness. And there are artists. He told me about Alex Gray. He taught me about Terrence McKenna. He taught me about like DMT and LSD and psilocybin, all these different people who'd studied these compounds and various other chemicals that they had used and expanded their consciousness with. And yeah, it was just, he was a lot. He was wild, but he also was a glassblower. And so he had a little studio in his backyard, and I would hang out with him, and he would just talk to me about stuff and like
How old were you
offered to teach me. I was 18.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so when you started working around, like, it sounds like you spent a lot of time with this guy, and I think it's just super interesting because, again, I love what you're chatting about in that, like, it is interesting. Like, I wrote this down, like the dynamic of what like teachers are supposed to be versus what this guy was to you, and it's like he kind of was filling that role of like what a teacher and a role model and like someone who's getting you to think more is really like, that's kind of the role he played. And it's just funny how you're exactly right in that so often we think like, oh, it's a linear fashion, like, oh, you're going to go to school, you're going to do this, you're going to learn from these people. And it's like, well, not necessarily. And I think it's kind of the difference between being educated versus having wisdom. And, you know, you can find people who have read a lot of books and know a lot of things, or maybe a book smart, but that doesn't mean they're necessarily wise. And I agree with you. I see a lot of people where they follow the path they're supposed to follow, quote unquote, but then they are miserable because they're doing something that it's really not, you know, it's not best suited. And the last guest we had was a gal named Tammy, and she was talking about just our personalities and how people respond to different things, and how people can be so miserable if they have a personality, but they're in a job that isn't best suited for that. And it's just, I feel like you're kind of describing that. And there's a lot you said that I want to pick up on, but I want to stay with like the glass blowing and kind of how that transitioned from a hobby to to a career. But I'm also really curious because I've never done psychedelics. I mean, the most I've ever done is smoke some weed and take some edibles. I mean, that's about it. And so I've never had that type of experience, but I think it's, again, a stigma that in our world today, I mean, there's so much research going on that shows that like it can help, especially with like PTSD or people who have had bad experiences or people who just need to like break away from themselves. I mean, you hear Sean Ryan talking about it, you hear Joe Rogan talking about it. And I do appreciate that because I think these things that where it's like taboo are becoming more like, this is America. Like we can talk about whatever, and we should be able to explore things, you know? So,
and not only that, but these certain things that have been used for all throughout human history. I mean, mushrooms, DMT, DMT is in one of the most common compounds on the planet. It's an incredible number of plants, and people have used it for thousands of years. And just to be told that, oh, now just recently, because we've lost our connection with nature and with the rest of our connection to the universe and how we create that through our mind and what you can see other sides of reality, it just has become like, oh, people are just shut off to it. But I think that, I mean, to bridge the gap between the psychedelics and the glass world is that there's the connection with how American pipe making, which is really like the type of glass blowing that I became a part of, came from psychedelics because there was a guy called Bob Snodgrass, and he started taking borosilicate glass, which is the type that they use for scientific glass for making scientific equipment, extraction equipment. It's Pyrex, what you'd see, like the stuff that can take a higher temperature. It's glass that's made with boron and some other ingredient, obviously, because it's called borosilicate. So it's a new type of glass that was created for be more durable. It's very resistant to heat shock and use in scientific work. So it's been incredibly important historically, that type of glass. He took it and started making pipes with it, and he was like, you know, just doing a few little things, adding some silver fume, different color techniques, and very, you know, what's now considered simple stuff. But at the time, nobody had really been doing that, and people were seeing his pieces, and they're like, oh, this is really cool. This is amazing. And you should go tour with the Grateful Dead. You should follow, because he was touring around the country selling his work and doing little workshops and stuff. And then someone was like, oh, you should go follow the Grateful Dead. So he went there to sell his pipes that he was making with this new type of glass, these new techniques, and then became connected with the psychedelic movement, the Grateful Dead, and their whole scene. So, and then that really became just more and more popular throughout America was like this artwork, this music, and the connection with the psychedelics, these experiences people were having. And like when a lot of that stuff is becoming way more mainstream now. Like you're talking about, you have Sean Ryan, Joe Rogan, some of the biggest shows in the world now are talking about these things and these positive experiences people can have and healing. And, for me, I was so young when I first started. I think I first took mushrooms and LSD when I was like probably 14 and quite a bit. And so I had it was just fun. I was fearless, and I was having mind expanding experiences and learning different things about the way that perception can unfold. And sometimes I still realize things that I was learning back then that I was just observing at the time. But to me, I was I look at it as a part of an underground shamanistic tradition that was passed down between groups of people for all throughout history. That there were medicine men, there was a shaman, there was a healer, there was people who knew about these things, that there was ways you could get help to change your consciousness. And now they're starting with OCD, people taking psilocybin at a high dose in a therapeutic setting, and they're not having OCD anymore. I mean, their lives have been destroyed by this, or PTSD, ketamine, things like that. And so the way that I learned about it, like the hippie culture or the underground culture, was like they knew how to do this. It was like I learned, that you don't eat certain foods beforehand. You say pretty clean and be healthy, and then you have a good environment around you, good people where you're safe, good chill music, comfortable chairs. Like you see, the typical hippie hangout where you got like a bean bag and all these things, and like the tapestries and the lava lamps and stuff like that. And like that, what do they do in a clinical setting now? They get you in a comfortable room, nice little blanket, a safe person there to watch you, some good music that all goes with the experience. Like they're doing the same things that the hippies and the people were doing to take care of each other, to make sure that you are safe, because you can have a really bad experience too. But if you want to have a good experience, you need to be taken care of and guided through it. And there was no legal way to do it. So there was information that was passed down, just from person to person about the dosage that you should take and how you should do it and how to be safe and what to do if someone has a bad time. And so that was like part of this tradition that I was brought into and then has, been part of my life. So, yeah.
I mean, and again, this is one of those things where it's a very interesting experience, because again, a lot of us have never, like I said, I've never done anything like that. So when you're talking about, and I know it's probably hard to put into words, but like when you're talking about having these, this expansion of consciousness, or things that you've learned, or things that like were, it almost sounds like you're describing like paradigm shifts in the way you approach thinking. Like, can you recall anything specific, or a time where you're like, I went into it this way and I came out this way thinking something different? I guess almost like not the biggest lessons learned, but like just key takeaways or things that you saw like, man, this impacted me.
Yeah, I mean, just off the top, I'd say the most significant was when it was an experience I had with DMT, where I was sitting by myself and I smoked the DMT. I immediately left my body like I was a beam of light. My consciousness just shot out to far, far into the universe, like in between galaxies, in a space where there's nothing. And I was a beam of light flying across space. And I saw these giant webs, like imagine a spider web, but the size of a solar system, connecting everything, pulling everything together. And I think that was an image of the way that gravity and the way that planets orbit around each other, solar systems orbit around galaxies, galaxies are all connected by some other thing, and it keeps expanding. It's an infinite expansion that's out there. And I flew in between these giant webs. They were silver colored, and I went right through out into even farther out, and like where there was absolutely nothing. And then I started to think, and I was fully awake, fully aware. It's not like a dream in the sense where things are strange or unclear. It's very vivid. It's like just like you and I are here right now, like completely. Like I woke up this morning, had my coffee, and like, bang, this happens. And so I have no physical presence, but I'm just observing what I'm seeing. And then I start to think, wait, I have a body. My body is somewhere. My body's back on earth. My body, I've left my body. I was like, I need to get back in my body. This became this overwhelming panic of like, okay, I've left my body and I'm still supposed to be alive. And that feeling became like a second wave of like this overwhelming panic that I was never going to get back into my body. And then I opened my eyes, took a breath. I'm looking around in my lap, and I have my pipe here and my lighter, and now it's like my consciousness is stretched all the way out back into space. My mind is still out there. My body is starting to move. Excuse me. And then the panic became even worse because now my body is like acting on its own and leaving without me and starting to do stuff. And I was still like separated from it. And so I was like, wait, I need to get back into my body. I need to become one. I can't be split and have my body move out without me. So I reached my hands up like this, and I look up, and I felt my consciousness splash like a waterfall back into my body from my feet all the way up to my head, and I became all one thing circulating again. There's a quote by Miyamoto Musashi that if you can become where your consciousness circulates everywhere equally within your body. Can't remember what the end of that quote was. Something to do with fighting, obviously, because it was a samurai dude. But he was, like, you had to learn that your consciousness is everywhere in your body. And then, so now my consciousness splashes back into my body. Open my eyes. And now I can see everything. And this is even the strangest part, was that I'm looking out across this landscape, and I can see every insect, every worm, every grasshopper, every beetle, every ant, every cell of every blade of grass growing to the edge and dying and falling away as the new growth comes out of the leaves and the grass. Everything that is happening all at once, and I can see every bit of it. And it's all humming and vibrating and buzzing and dying and growing and decaying and being reborn all at once constantly. It was like a little window of what God would see if God sees everything and knows everything. It's an all overwhelming sense that there's an infinite amount of things happening all at once, right? And I'm stunned by this, and I'm overwhelmed by all that I can see. And then my consciousness, my awareness of all that goes away and shrinks back into me and my little narrow flashlight of awareness that I get to shine on what's in front of me. And the biggest takeaway from that was that we have this gift that we're given by being born as an individual. And I think the three things that we have all in one is we have a mind, a body, and a soul all together. And we're in a physical world where we get to slice through it as one. God sees everything, and God is busy because there's a lot of fucking stuff going on. But we get to be not omnipresent, but like unipresent. We're just one consciousness. And that's our gift, is that we get to make a choice. And our decisions and our choices, we just slice through all that like a little razor blade. And we only go where we want. And so we get to dance, and we get to sing, and we get to just party around and experience life as one individual connected with the universe as part of this game. And that was the most profound psychedelic experience that I gained from that. So.
What, I mean, with your, and is that obviously this being exposed to that at a young age and just the impact it had, how did that affect, I mean, I feel like almost glassblowing sounds like it's like something you stumbled on that almost kind of like a perfect fit for where you were at. And just like, what were you doing beforehand for work? And when did it transition from something you were doing as a hobby to something you were doing to make money? And then ultimately something you were doing to support your livelihood?
I wasn't doing anything. Had just gotten out of high school. I think I was actually 17 when I met Andrew, and my dad had just left and moved back to Australia. I think right when I turned 18, he moved back, and his name is also Andrew. And it's kind of ironic that I meet this other character. It's an older dude named Andrew, and kind of takes me under his wing. I think I was like finding a new dad, kind of, still so young, and I was like, oh, this is cool. He's like someone who is winning at this kind of weird game on this other side of things where he's making art and he knows like all this weird stuff, and I was really into it. He taught me how to like, I don't know, just do a bunch of random cool things. And I hadn't really never had a job. I'd only worked on my family's ranch a little bit and been in school. Started selling weed when I was like 14, so I was just selling weed, and that was what I was doing. And then I saw glassblowing, and it's just I just loved it. It's magical when you light up the flame and you melt the glass in it, and it gets molten, it becomes alive, and it's this amazing material that changes with everything you do to it. You're just constantly manipulating it, and it flows in this very liquid way and then becomes a crystal again, and it transforms in just this magical way. I just thought it was the coolest medium. Plus you could make a pipe with it, and I loved weed, I loved to smoke, and it just became this kind of, like you're saying, this perfect fit for me, where like there's like a legit thing that I could do that was artistic, to play with fire, and it's kind of dangerous and cool, and then you make pipes with it, and then you can sell them. People will give you money for it, and it's like, it's not even illegal. So I was like, dude, that's so cool. I could actually do this. And I just wanted to, first I didn't even want to make any money. I just wanted to like be able to keep doing it. And so I'd make a little case of pipes and go like door to door to the head shops in town, and I was like, I need money for gas to get home and stuff. Like I just needed food, so I was like, and they'd be nice and buy some stuff for me. And like the first time I made like $200, I was like, oh my god, this is it! Like I won. I fucking won, and I just never went back.
When you started, didn't you start posting on social media? And how did that change everything?
I didn't post on social media. I started in like 2012 blowing glass. I didn't post anything on social media till like 2016 maybe. Wow. My girlfriend, who's now my wife, she taught me about Instagram and all that. And she was like, dude, you have to get on Instagram after this is what people do. You have to take pictures and all. So she schooled me on all that stuff and like really got me started on the Instagram, which was where the whole glass pipe scene in America really moved to. Like the market is all sales are through there. Collectors post their pieces. It's a big community on Instagram for glass is beautiful and pictures. It just works for that.
I've seen too that since we've known each other, like the detail and like you're an artist through and through. That's what I've started to see too as we've gotten to know each other more, is that like even the way you do your post and the way you present things and the way you have like your pieces like rotating, or almost sometimes I feel like you're telling a story with your art, like and with your glass. And then especially as much as like some of the glass pieces, like I think I've smoked weed out of like an actual bong once in my life. Did not like it. Coughed like a little girl. Like it was bad. All right. But I always like, it was something, I love good art. And so I would see what you were doing. I was like, man, that's really cool. But
thanks, man.
What really, really caught my interest, and fully intend down the road is I got to make more money. So, but when you're doing those watches, the Rolexes you've been doing, and like, especially when you were at my house and you were telling me the story of why you did what you did on the different pieces, and like you were showing me the face of the watch and how each thing still lined up with the numbers, and you're explaining to me like, oh, this is why this skull is here. And it's just like I felt like you were describing to me your watch the same way. Like if anyone ever looks at my tattoos, I know like on camera they just like a big black blob because you can see it, but like under light, and when you see it, it's like there's a story behind this whole piece, you know. And man, that to me is like how did you transition, and I guess where do you see yourself going? Because it sounds like the way you talk about blowing glass reminds me of the way when we talk about jiu-jitsu. Like I love jiu-jitsu. I'm going to do jiu-jitsu for as long as I can. I hope to stay healthy and do it until I just can't. I got to train for a long time still though, just because I can't let Lincoln beat me up. I'm going to smash that kid. I'm going to smash him, dude. Like I love that little boy so much that he's going to get the business. But like, I feel like that's how you, when you're talking about glass blowing, it's kind of the same way. Almost like even if you weren't making money, like I see you still being something you like to do. I mean, do you see yourself like, is that still the main business you think for yourself long term, or do you see it transitioning to doing more of the like, you know, getting commissioned to do watches and stuff like that? What do you see there?
I became pretty interested through some artists that have influenced me, like contemporary artists. Christopher Sir is one. He's a jeweler, a watch engraver. He also sculpts marble. He turned me on to an artist from like the 1500s, a Renaissance artist named Benvenuto Cellini, who's an Italian artist, and his autobiography is awesome. He's just a wild guy.
Well, we'll have to circle back to that, but yeah, I'm gonna.
So his life story was he was a goldsmith. His dad wanted him to play, to be a musician, so he played music. Then he went into goldsmithing, and then he learned various other types of art. And he just really, it's a long story, but he really imposed like no limitations on himself. It's like, I can do anything artistically. I choose to work with gold because I like it, and he liked what it does, and he liked the way that it, you know, it was small, it was valuable, he could make cool things with it, but he wasn't limited to just that. And then, you know, I saw Chris Sir like that same way too, where he's an artist who doesn't impose limitations on himself, and that inspired me a lot. And I also, through him, learned about René Lalique, who was an original glassblower jeweler. He designed perfume bottles, and he was French, but he was around like one of the people who created Art Nouveau in that time period. And so they called some of these artists of total art. And so they would design buildings, they were architects, or they maybe work with different materials. There was no, like, everything they did was art. There was no, you know, one medium or one thing that they did. Like, it just, whatever they touched would turn into something beautiful. And that's, I think, the direction that I started to take, because I wanted to separate myself from being just a pipe maker. And there's lots of successful people who are just pipe makers, and it's a very utilitarian thing. It functions a certain way, it looks a certain way, it has certain characteristics that are useful and functional, and it does something, but they're not necessarily about something. And like you said, with the watches, with the engraving, with certain pieces, or even my videos, photography, it's trying to tell a story. And that because I think what defines art is that art is about something. Art tells a story. And so if you're making something, you know, that's why so much of modern art is trash, because it's not about anything.
Yeah, I know we talk about like AI even, and like how, and I understand where you're coming from, because like even when we're at the gym and we put like AI music on, like I know you're not a huge fan, like, and there's some good stuff, like,
It's
but I know
terrible.
Yeah, I know you like, and I understand where you're coming from. But then I remember when we were talking a few months ago, you were saying that like some artists are now trying to like be trendy, where they chase it and like using AI to make their art. And it's like, well, that's not art anymore. And there's the difference between like, I forget, I was reading a book recently, but it talked about the process, and it was talking about how, yes, with AI, you could have AI create some picture for you, but it means nothing, because like there was no time, there was no effort, there was no like anything, there's no soul to it.
And it makes you dumber. using it to come up with ideas, using it to generate, using it to do your photography or your editing or make videos for you or any of that stuff, then you're not learning anything. You're not creating, I am creating myself as I'm creating my work or as I'm trying to improve. It's a process of getting better. And so and I don't even need to debate whether like there's useful places for AI. There obviously is, but I think that for me and for what I want to do is I got into this to be as self-reliant as I can because one of the main reasons was because I didn't want to be tied down to a job so I could go help my family on the ranch when they needed me, help my grandfather, who's one of the most important people in my life, and I always wanted to be free to be there for him. And so relying on using this machine to think for you is eliminating more and more of that from our species, and I think it's the wrong way to go to develop yourself.
And what's your granddad's name, by the way?
His name was Irving Alderson.
Irv, all right, because as long as I've known you, feel like you've always you'll just out in some places reference Granddad.
Oh yeah,
and I just how did he become such an influential part of your life, and what was that relationship like that you had with him?
I think it started when I was pretty young. I think I was in kindergarten. My mom was in nursing school. My dad was working, and my school only went 4 days a week, so they were closed on Friday. And I was in Sheridan, Wyoming, which is about an hour from the ranch. And so Granddad would come on Friday morning. He would come pick me up, and I'd go with him for the weekends. And my parents weren't there, so it was like I was just doing whatever Granddad, they trusted Granddad, and I was just with him. And he was born in 1930. He was a real cowboy, as real of a cowboy as there ever was and that has lived today. And that means a lot of different things. But he was so kind, so smart, so funny, always made me laugh, started teaching me how to hunt when I was 5, took me hunting rabbits. And I would just hang out with Granddad. And so, I don't know, he was just always there for me. He was always teaching me, always making me laugh, always telling me funny jokes and giving me books to read and just loving me, just being my friend. I worked hard with him, we worked on the ranch. When I got a little older, we'd always ride from when I was a little kid and just be out there all day fixing fence with him or whatever. And he was just awesome.
I was thinking about the other day when I called you, and I think it was the day before we were having breakfast, and I was like, "How you doing?" You're like, "I'm tired," and I was just like, "What did Granddad say?"
Yeah, he said I always tell that story. I think I was probably 17, 18 maybe, and we'd been working cows all day. Sometimes you got to sort them and move them from one pasture to another, and then you got to get some that you're going to get rid of and separate them out. And we were in this set of corrals where you have different pens and things, and I had to keep getting on and off my horse to open these gates and stuff. And I got off my horse, and I was kind of standing there, and he rode up next to me. He said, "Now, son, if you ever leave this ranch, don't ever let anybody see you standing there next to a good horse." And meaning that you should fucking get on and be doing something, just standing around. I said, "But Granddad, I'm tired." He said, "No, son, being tired don't matter." And he didn't say it meanly, he didn't, it was just very matter of fact. It was just, it doesn't matter. And I was like, oh, I guess I could be a little tired and I can keep going. I'll get back on. We'll get it done. He was probably 60 by then, or he'd probably been tired for 30 years, but so he was just, he was my hero, I guess. He was like the person I wanted to be like. I wanted to do things the way that he did. I wanted to be loved the way people loved him. I wanted to make people laugh and work hard like him. And I always wanted to be like him.
That's what you're describing, I feel like, is the way I look at my dad. You know, my dad is, I grew up in, just even to this day, like my dad, he was a police officer for over 30 years. I think, you know, of his 35-year career.
How old is your dad?
He's in his early 60s. So he's, I think he was 22 or 23 when I was born, and I'm almost 40. So yeah, he's probably like 62.
So he was a police officer in like the 90s, 80s, early 2000s?
Yeah, 90s for sure. I mean, yeah, for a while, because like as long as I've known him, he became a police officer as soon as he could. I think in Vegas, you have to be 20 and a half to go to the force like academy to do that, because they want you to be 21 by the time you you're actually a police officer. But he was a police officer basically his whole adult life, and he also spent the majority of his career in Las Vegas on, you know, Metro, which is a huge police department. Like they're doing tons of stuff.
Yeah.
And he spent the most of his time on their SWAT team, to the point where by the time he left, their SWAT team is the Zebra unit, and so they have like two different SWAT teams. I think it's red and blue. And then they're like Zebra from like 20 to 1. And 1 is like the number one guy on the team. It'd be the equivalent of like a platoon sergeant or a first sergeant in the Army. And he was Zebra 1, you know, when he retired. And so everywhere we went in Vegas, and to this day, like my dad makes everything happen. He's a mover, he's a shaker, he connects everything. He retired from the police force and now runs this security company that only works with like ultra high net worth, like ultra high net worth, like the 1%, you know, the people on Epstein Island type people, you know. Just kidding, Dad. Just kidding, Dad. But everywhere we went, like I never met someone who was more personable. I never met someone who could make people smile more. I always looked up to him. I was like, man, I really want to be like my dad when I grow up. And he was the type of guy where, I mean, as much I have such a lucky, I'm always like, oh, I'll tell stories. I don't think any of my family watches this. It doesn't matter. But like growing up, I was really blessed. Like my mom and my stepdad's another person I really respect, because my stepdad, now that I am a dad and I have children of my own, I respect so much more how he treated me, because he always treated me as his own son. I understand that I was his stepson, and I didn't understand that, you know, because him and my mom started dating when I was 3. And so I was just like, you know, I just always called him dad. So I call both of them dad, but like he always treated me like his own son, which was really important to me. But like I saw with my biological father, he didn't make tons of money. You know, he was a police officer, so he was making a decent amount, but not so much. And he always had money, and he was always like looking ahead of how he could make money. And I remember he bought this house that was out in what felt like the middle of nowhere in Vegas in the desert. And there was this one little street with like 3 or 4 other houses. And I was like, why do you live all the way out here? He's like, Robert, don't worry. In a few years, there's going to be houses all the way up to the mountain. He's like, and he was right. And so I just saw that he had like foresight, but he was also like, he could fight, he could talk. And one of his sayings he would say is like, Robert, you get a lot farther in life with a gun and a smile versus just a gun. And I always thought that was so true. And I think that's something like, even with training, like, that I've seen with you, man, is that you're very much like happy-go-lucky. Like we've talked about, like after you had those dudes try and mess with you, like at the carnival a year or 2 ago. And I was like, yeah, man, that's why I have all these tattoos. They're a cry for help, because like if someone was walking down the road and there is Sam and Robert walking down, and someone said, you got to pick one of these guys to fight, I think most people would look at me and they'd look at you, and you're like, you kind of like come off as like a hippie dude, like, oh, just smiling, happy, like you're in great shape. But I think like if I didn't know anything, I'd be like, I'm going to fight that guy. Oh my God, what a mistake. Like that would be a horrible day for them. But like, I feel like that's kind of the way like your personality has been too, where it's just very much like just a happy-go-lucky guy. But then like, I've always respected the way that from a self-development standpoint, especially with martial arts, like even though we're both hobbyists, like I feel like you like embody like what it is to be a martial artist. And I try and do the same thing at the hobbyist level. Like I want to shoot well. I want to be able to fight. I want to be able to defend myself. And I always appreciate the way you talk about stuff, because you'll be teaching classes and you'll bring up like the Book of 5 Rings. You'll be talking about, what is his name? Miyamoto, how do you say his name?
Miyamoto Musashi.
Yes. Yeah. I know people are going to hate on me, but like, I recognize that like you are thinking, and I remember just even a month or so ago, you were teaching a class on turtle. And again, for people who don't do jiu-jitsu, sorry, we're nerding out a little bit, but like, I always looked at turtle as like a defensive spot. And the way you've talked about stuff where you're like, oh no, you're like a snapping turtle. Like, yeah, you're not in the best spot, but let's see, that one wanted to stop. But you make sure your camera's still going, will you please? Is it?
How do I?
Let's see that.
Yeah, we're good.
All right, so sorry, editors. You can, but you were talking about like basically being like, oh, you're like a snapping turtle. So yeah, this is a bad spot, but you still want to be like fighting hard from here. Even like when you were teaching a month or two back about like back control, and you're like, yeah, I'm in a shitty spot here, but I'm doing everything I can to make this shitty for you. I'm pushing into you here. I'm leaning in on your feet. I'm doing everything I can. I'm moving constantly so that you are like, dude, this sucks. Like, so you have to keep thinking about like, he's going to escape. He's going to escape, so that like, then you do. And like, and it creates opportunities. And so like one of the other books you recommended was, I can't think of the title, but it was the book on tennis. What was that book called again? It was something.
The Inner Game of Tennis.
Yes. Yeah. So I remember when you brought that book up, and like, that was a couple years ago. And I was like, because I don't know, like I kind of jokingly like belittle myself, but if someone could see inside my head, like, I'm the man. This is great. Everything works out for me. No one can touch me. I'm unstoppable. Like I believe those things. Jesse's like, yeah, he says this stuff. Like sometimes I'll say it out
it's
loud.
not internal.
Yeah. Oh, that's funny.
But it's good. It's genuinely good for you.
But it's also because I work really hard. Like for me with my work, one thing that you said that like, dude, I am so glad like to have you as a friend, and some of the like little like nuggets of insight you've dropped and wisdom, because at my Christmas party, we were talking, and you talked about how you're like, yeah, I've gone back to making sure like the first hour of my day, I'm working towards like my big important projects or whatever is like the most important thing. And you essentially said something to the tune of like, all the other little shit never goes away. It's always there. It's always going to be there. And if you don't spend an hour, your first hour, like on yourself and on what's most important to you, like it will just kind of go by you.
You've told me that.
The first hour on long-term projects that don't have an immediate due date or an immediate payoff, like the thing that's due tomorrow will always get done. And this I got from Jocko Willing's podcast. He talked about this. It was like he's written a lot of books, and he said, I never got a book written until I started spending the first hour of the day writing, because the book is never due tomorrow. The book might not even have, he probably didn't get advances for his book from publishers, probably didn't even have a due date on it. So if you just do the first stuff that's original, due tomorrow in the beginning of the day, then the rest of the day, by the afternoon, you get tired and you don't ever do the long-term thing. And for me, that's exercise doesn't have it's not, your workout's not due tomorrow. So I do that first, and then I do something I'm trying to learn. Yeah. Like a long-term thing. And it's been big.
Man, I'm so glad you said that though, because that was something that, like probably from 2020 to about 2023, I did religiously. I woke up and I spent an hour like on my business and on making things happen. And what ultimately ended up happening is everything I worked towards, it came to be. And I was, and then it worked so well, I was like, oh, I stopped doing it.
Right.
And, but it was, I'm in a business development group that I'm the president of, and we were talking about goal setting. This was probably 5-6 months ago, and I was doing the training, and I went back and I pulled up my goals from, I think it was 2020 when I wrote them down, and I wrote down like things like how big I wanted my business to be, how much money I wanted to be making, what I wanted, like, just what I wanted my life to look like. And I have that sheet of paper still, like I have it. And this was something I reviewed daily, and it's crazy, dude. Like within just a couple $1,000s a month, I hit all those goals. Now, what's also funny is that all the goals that I wrote down, I didn't accomplish them any way that I thought I was going to. Like it was completely different route that I ended up going, but I hit the goals, and like, but it was like just a reminder to me that like, man, I have stopped giving like myself that first hour, and it's something I changed immediately. Like after you left that night, I was like, fuck this, I'm going back to doing this shit, and I'm gonna change my life. And it's something I've been doing very, very consistently. And that's another thing with life. Like I don't beat myself up. Like you're talking about being a good friend to yourself. Like I have also learned for myself, like if I try and be perfect, it's like I resent the process. I hate it. Like if I'm like, I'm going to work out 7 days every week, I'm going to eat perfect, I'm going to do this, I'm going to train it's like, it's not fun anymore. Like
then you're being a little tyrant.
Yes. There you go. I'm being a tyrant. Yeah. And so now it's like, no, I'm going to do these things most days. Like, and that to me is my rule of thumb. Like I'm going to work out 5 to 6 days every week. I'm going to train jiu-jitsu 3 to 4 times a week. I'm going to work hard. No, it's your camera. Your camera's too hot. I'm gonna let that power it down. I'll finish this, then we'll go back to it. But like, I'm gonna do those types of things that like allow me to like accomplish the goals I want, to move forward the way I want to move, but never in a way where it's like, if I don't do this, I'm not like myself, you know. But let's do this. I think all these cameras are getting a little hot. Let's take a quick break. We can use the restroom, and then we'll come back. All right.
That's good.
So on that note, I am kind of curious what got you started in, I guess, self-development as a whole, but also jiu-jitsu as well, because I think that's part of it. But it sounds like you read a lot of books. You're really focused on your physical and mental health. And so a lot of people I know, they go through their whole lives never reading books like that because they feel like they don't need it or they don't need help with stuff like that. So I'm just kind of curious what got you into that.
I think I was, well, not to go too far back, but so I'm an only child and I've spent a lot of time in my life alone, and books really were my friends. Like, I loved books. And since I was a little kid, I listened to books on tape and just like play by myself. The stories, the characters, they were really there for me when nobody else was there. And still, so I've always turned to books as a comfort, as a place to find information and wisdom and learning. And I got, and my parents put me into judo when I was probably 11 or 10, maybe. I did some judo. I was a really small kid. I got picked on a lot and just, pushed around and stuff because I was really little. And then I did some judo. That helped me give me some confidence. I really liked that. And that was just a couple years that I did that. And then went a while before I did any martial arts again. And I was interested in it. And then I don't even know. Probably just like started listening to like Joe Rogan and shit and like hearing about jiu-jitsu. And I was like, oh, I did some jiu-jitsu. I did some judo. I know some of this stuff. I was like, let me try to find someone. It was a long time before I actually went into the gym and like signed up. It was like I was really skinny. Like Rob said, when he first met me, I was like pretty scrawny. I mean, I think I weighed like 155 pounds when I first started jiu-jitsu, and I'm like 185 now. I'm almost 190, and it's just been like a long, I remember even thinking back then, I was like, man, I'd like to be a little bigger, but it takes a long time. I started lifting kettlebells a little bit, doing a little push-ups, just trying a little bit, started feeling better. And the thing about exercise that's great is like, if you work out, you get a pump, and you get a little glimpse into the future you'll have of like what your muscles will look like if you keep going. So like you get to see it pretty quickly right away, especially when you first start. That first couple of months, like going from having zero muscle tone and like zero fucking strength, and then you can see improvement like pretty fast. And I really liked that. And growing up ranching and stuff, I was always strong. I could always work hard. I wasn't afraid of working, and so I just started leaning into it, signed up for jiu-jitsu, and I was just like, oh yeah, this place where like it's okay to be aggressive and to be physical, and there's a clear pathway to success, and there's a clear reason why the black belt is the teacher and the black belt is because when you're a white belt, all the other colored belts. I remember this small young lady was named Olivia. She was a blue belt, probably weighed 115 pounds, and she would triangle choke me. Like every day she would choke me out. And I was like, okay, today, like, I'm not allowing this. I will seriously, for real this time, I will not be choked by this girl. And she would do it to me every time. And that was like, this is like some type of magic that this is happening to me. So that was probably like the main person. I was like, I have to figure that out. This is unacceptable.
It's a 150-pound woman.
Yeah. This tiny girl is strangling me, and there's nothing I can do. And I was like, I need to figure this out. And so I just loved it because I was always like physical, and I wanted something to do, but I didn't like team sports. And I liked the subjects. I did really well in school. I did really well in math. I was in AP geometry, AP algebra. I never did calculus because I stopped going to school by then. But I think looking back, like math made sense to me because it's objective. It's like the numbers makes sense. The math works. There's no human interpretation really of like what the math is doing. And so I was like, I respected math because it's respectable. There's a defined reason why this works. And a lot of other subjects were like the teachers putting their little sauce on it, and they have opinions, and a lot of like they're recommending certain books and leaving certain other things out. And I was like, why?
Ambiguous.
Yeah, it's subjective and ambiguous. And I think martial arts were more of like, okay, there's like, this
Which is so interesting because your job is art now.
I think that art is objective too. I have a
Really?
view of objective quality of goodness in art. It's a debate. It's, you know, there's a long conversation to be had about that. There's a subjective quality to it, and things can mean different things to different people. But if you look at like a Renaissance master, painter, or something like a really good painting, it's just objectively good because it's hard to do. Like modern art pieces, or like, you know, not to pick on Jackson Pollock or some type of thing like that, but if it's just like splatters, or it's just like a square on a canvas, or, you know, a banana taped to a wall, or we've seen art become this like joke because people have taken the subjective side of it way too far, and everything is subjective. Nothing has any objective quality to it of beauty. And that's just, I took the approach of technical skill, objective quality, and trying to convey some type of meaning and beauty through it. And so that's, I think at least it's more useful to take that path with art, because then you gain technical skill and you gain some objective quality of good, you know, something that's good, and then be original and add this objective.
Do you think people like almost pretend to like that stuff just to be contrarian?
I think yes.
And just to be more diversified?
Yeah, some people are just contrary, and they want to think that they're smart, so that they will decide that there's some value in this thing, and you just can't understand it. A lot of things too with art is there's a lot of money laundering that happens with art and paintings, and like, you know, one thing that can happen. So if I set up a family foundation, right, and I'm some super rich person, and I buy a piece of art for $20,000, and then I go and have it appraised by my friend who's an appraiser for, you know, 5 million, and then I get it insured and everything. So now it's worth 5 million, and then I donate that to my private family foundation. I write that off as a charitable donation, and then it's some bullshit that's not good. Now it's hanging on a gallery. It's in a show for 5 million. People go and look at it and say, oh, it's so expensive. It must be good. You just must not understand it because you're not an intellectual like me. And then it's a fucking scam. So there's a lot of that.
I'm thinking of like Team America. Why can't everyone be smart like me?
Exactly. So, I mean, that's why I think, you know, I mean, good luck if you don't have technical skills. Like the technical skill of the craftsman and the artist combined is like, you got to pay your bills, and, you know, good luck paying your bills if you don't have technical skill and some objective quality that can be kind of seen by anybody too. We're like, oh, that is, you know, that's difficult. I couldn't do that.
Your art is a perfect example of that. Like, I know nothing about glass blowing. It's not something to me that like, I've never looked at or searched it out, but like I can look at what you make and I'm like, that's badass.
Thanks, man.
And again, there's been times where like with some of your Instagram posts, especially when you're like, I can tell you've taken the time to like make this post. And I know that people watching these, you know, minute long posts, they're like, oh, it was a minute. And then they only watch 15 seconds of it. And you're like, dude, that took me hours to get this set up and to make it look right and to edit it the way I wanted it. And to like, it's just like, oh man, but like, so I appreciate that, because I do understand, you know, that a lot of times people don't understand like behind the scenes, all the things that are happening to like make a 60-second Instagram post, you know?
Well, it's all we have. I mean, I realized just early on that in a visual system like Instagram that functions off of pictures, originally now videos, that my connection to the world and to my potential clients is only through these pictures and these videos. So you should be as good as you can. And I just see someone that's like holding their piece in their dirty living room with their cat and stuff in the background. It's like, it looks bad because there's this distracting shit in the background that's not it's taking away from your piece. And so I try to remove everything that's not beneficial to the true quality of glass. Is like a piece of glass in the sun is one of the most magical and beautiful looking things. That's why like churches all have these huge stained glass windows. You see the light coming through the stained glass, and the way glass interacts with light is one of the most magical and scientifically important things too, because a glass prism will like reflect light. You have all these different things that we study through, like the diffusion of light through the spectrum that we've been able to study because of this. So the interaction of glass in the light is what I'm trying to show, that the beauty of this piece. And I can only get a little bit of that through the camera, but as much as you can, try to show the true beauty of it without taking away from it. So I'm trying to just do justice to the material.
What you're describing, and I feel like I end up talking about this book almost every podcast, but it's a book called Excellence Wins, and it's by Hort Schulze, who was the president, and I think he was like the COO of Ritz-Carlton. Wow. And he talks like the way you're describing what you're going through, and how it's just like making, like you said, I have this one little, like this window to show what I'm doing to the world. And so making it excellent and making something that like people want to stop. And like one of our core foundations as a company is having remarkable interactions, because our business is a lot of referral based, and referrals from everywhere, from online, from just the stuff that we do. Like I kind of count that as like people, when they find us online, it's not by accident. Like we've gone out there and tried to let people see who we are. And it's almost like a form of referral where like people get to know what we do. But for years of my business, and this is something that Josie and I've been talking about, is like, I would just get referrals from everyone. I would get, 5 to 7 to 10 referrals per client. And I had all these people to call. And I kind of realized, like, if I wanted to get referrals, I had to create an experience that was so remarkable that people wanted to remark on it. And so I had to create something that was so much better than what people expected. And that was something that really was powerful for me as I was first building my business, because it allowed me to come to the idea that like all capitalism really should be is giving away more value than you're ever taking. And if you do that, especially in a line of work like ours, where it's residually based, it's like if you're constantly giving away more value than you're ever taking, people don't leave and they keep coming back, and then they want to tell their friends, and they want, and it's something that people are like excited to share because it's important. Like in our line of work, people have goals, they have financial things they want to accomplish. And right now the world is so cluttered when it comes to money that it's like just knowing how to navigate through that noise. And going back to what we were talking about, even with AI, I'm not worried about AI replacing us as the advisor. And the reason for it is because at this point in the game, I don't think that anyone our age, or even like a young 20-year-old person, like and above, they're not going to trust their life savings to a computer that has no soul, like we were going about earlier. They're just not going to. And again, I'm sure there will be eventually. Like now, Lincoln, who's 7 right now, or Remy, maybe they will, because by the time they're there, they will have grown up using it. But like,
depends what ends up happening with it.
Yeah,
and if someone does, like I got an AI financial advisor, and he decided that I should sell all my belongings and become a monk because that would be best for my character development or something. You never know what a computer, you don't know what a machine might actually do.
Well, and it goes back to like AI's cheap. And it gives cheap. So AI art is cheap, and it's giving cheap. Nobody wants to spend money on a piece of AI artwork. Yeah, sure. You know what I'm saying? And some people will, and there will always be people will. People will right now with Robinhood. Yeah,
it was like, what were those things that people were making?
NFTs.
Yes. Yeah, like I remember when NFTs were coming around, but like, and again, like there's a lot, like you said, there is some great things that AI does that when people are using it as a leveraging tool, where they're still the person driving the ship, they're the one controlling it, and they're using it to just essentially make things happen faster. But there's a lot of like bullshit with it as well that's just like kind of a waste. So I don't know. It's just one of those things that I think
not kind of a waste. I mean, an enormous waste. One of the biggest wastes that we've created, as a human species so far. I think like what's happening with these data centers and these like small communities where they're running out of water, they're polluting the air, they're polluting the noise, they're running these huge turbines to run these things, and for what? Like Yeah, I think I mean, we'll find out, but I think the AI bubble right now is gonna break. I think it's a big, a lot of it's a big, stupid thing.
When you say break, what do you mean? Like where
People are gonna lose faith in it. I think if there's enough people like you're saying where they realize like we don't, and I don't know how much of these data centers are being used for the government applications for corporate stuff, or like, but how much of it is just like people asking dumb questions on ChatGPT and like talking to it like it's your friend. I mean, people are gonna find out that I think they don't want an AI financial advisor. They don't want an AI friend. They don't want an AI girlfriend. They want a real human person, or they want to be there for themselves and have critical thinking skills. And I think they're learning in school that, like, even in school, less technology is better for kids. You know, using your brain. My son's only 2 right now, and I think if I could teach him the most important thing is how to think for yourself and how to understand when you're being manipulated, and how to just find information on your own. And that's not asking ChatGPT, what should I do? Asking that, it's like in artwork, and this is one thing that I learned from some artists that I'm really influenced by too, is that if you want to create good art, you have to try to go to the source for inspiration. If you're drawing too much inspiration from your contemporaries, you're scraping from. It's like getting a ChatGPT answer for something. There's like scraping information from contemporary sources that are shallow and that are like, that's a repetition of a repetition of it's a copy of a copy of a copy. And that's why the AIs, like, they make up stuff a lot, or they give you bad answers. If you don't dig below the surface, you just take everything it says as true. It could just be repeating something that was wrong, that was repeated for something that was wrong, and then just fabricating bad stuff. So if you're trying to create a good piece of art and you want to find inspiration, if you're just copying from people who are currently doing it, you're just now biting your fellow artists. But if you go to the source and you're looking deeper into history, and you go to the museums and you go to the books and you go to the libraries and you look at the oldest pieces you can find, and that what they were inspired by, it's inspired by nature, it's inspired by history, it's inspired by truth, and it's inspired by real deep things. And I think that's the way to try to make good art, is to try to look the original sources.
What do you do for yourself then, as far as when you're going through your process for learning, or you're going through looking for inspiration? Like, I think of the watch. I think are you wearing the watch you showed me when you're at my house?
Yeah, I'm wearing one of those.
So like, even something like that, like, where are you going? It's kind of a 2-part question. Like, what is your process for when you do want to learn something? Because I wish that people could sit in. Your jiu-jitsu classes are becoming some of my favorite. I like, not to take away from Brad, our coach. He's a phenomenal teacher. I think he's one of the best instructors. Like, it's funny, I will pay all this money for these instructionals on like BJJ Fanatics, and I'm like, shit, teaching exactly what Brad showed us the exact same way. Like, God damn it. Yeah. But what I've really liked, and I've talked to some of the other guys in the gym, that you've been doing is like, it's almost like a philosophy class, like when you're teaching, and you can tell with the lessons you've had, and you've been teaching now for a couple of years, like, you've thought through these positions and you've thought through why you're doing what you're doing. And so like, when you're trying to learn something and you are trying to like deep dive the way that you like to deep dive, what does that process look like, and how do you draw that inspiration?
Inspiration is, it's a tricky word for me. I try to kind of avoid inspiration because it's not reliable. Inspiration gets you at, like, Stephen Pressfield wrote this book called The War of Art, and it's all about how to be productive as an artist. And he says, like, the muse will come to you, but she has to find you working, or she's going to leave and go to somebody else who's doing something. So if you're sitting around waiting for inspiration, you're being lazy and it's not going to come to you. And I think the good stuff sneaks in when you're sitting down and you're getting started, and when you don't want to, when you feel resistance and you're feeling, sluggish. It's like people talk about writer's block or that type of thing, where like the blank page is very intimidating because just getting started is really hard. So I think like was it Malcolm Gladwell who wrote the book about the
outliers?
The outliers, yeah. So I think he talks about mastering the art of getting started. Pretty sure it was him who said this, but this is something that I found, like when I do my glass pieces that have all these really small lines, like each one has 120 really small lines, and it's just very repetitive, very boring, just drawing these little lines with little glass strings. And sometimes I have to do, for one project I did 20 of those on one piece, and they each take me like 2 hours. So and that was just for the pattern pieces, and then I had to assemble the whole thing together. So it's a daunting process, but mastering doing one is like, that gets me going, like get started. Engraving this watch that took like 2 months to do. I don't worry about the whole thing. I do one piece, I find the next step, and then I get started on it. And like as soon as I know, like for sure this piece needs a border, no matter what, it's got to have a border. The picture and everything else that's going to go inside the border, that's going to all be there, but it has to have the border. So if you sit around waiting to like know what you're going to do, you never get started just working on the border, and the border is going to take you hours and hours no matter what you have to do it. So you have to do that, and then the next thing I almost always find, like I let ideas loosely float in my mind. Sometimes I'll go for a walk. I hold an idea kind of loosely, but I don't get attached to it right away until it feels right. And then when it feels right, then I take the next step, and then I move on with that one next step. And then until the next step becomes clear and it feels right and the previous step has been done well, then I move on. So like just very small, I break things down into the smallest possible piece that I can manage, because otherwise I won't do anything. It's like getting out of bed in the morning to work out. It's like, you go, great idea to get up at 5 a.m. and work out. If you can't manage not hitting snooze on your alarm and actually just rolling out of bed and standing up, and like now you're on the way. But that's the hard part, is not snoozing the alarm. It's like just getting started, just getting up, just getting moving. Like that's what I do. Is I don't really worry about inspiration. I just get to work.
Yep. No, it's like the saying, the harder I work, the luckier I get. Mm-hmm. I think about that all the time, and I feel like that's lessons that I've learned in my past, is that, like we were talking off camera just right before, like about staying healthy and like not training when you're hurt, and just because all that stuff, if you get hurt, now it's like, oh, what do I have to take? 2 months off, 3 months, 6 months? How long? And how much better would I have been if I just would have taken some time to do this the right way versus trying to rush the process? Mm-hmm. However, I see people take that to the other side, where they're like, oh, I'm a little beat up today. Oh, I'm a little tired today. Oh, I'm this, so I don't want to train.
Like the Chael Sonnen quote, like, yeah, I bet your rib did hurt. It's attached to a coward.
Yeah, it's attached to a coward. I love it. He's got such great sayings. But it's exactly it, man. And again, there's the difference between like what we were talking about earlier, where I will, like earlier this week, I think on maybe what is it, Wednesday? So on Monday, I didn't work out. I just was feeling a little under the weather. I was like, you know what? Today's not the day. Like I could tell in my own body. But that's okay. That's okay, like once. But then yesterday, I crushed myself. Sunday, I was on that aerodyne bike crushing myself, thinking about you mounting me and punching me in the face. Like I legitimately think about that, because I've noticed, and like when we're doing it, we're like, you've talked to me like, hey dude, just because you're like in a bad position doesn't mean you gotta stop thinking. It doesn't mean you like get to like panic. You're like, okay, like I still need to figure a way out of this. And maybe I don't get out, but I'm going to think for as long as I can. And I think that's something that when I look at hard things, like that's one of the things I'm trying to teach Lincoln, is I'm trying to force him to do hard things to build character. So like we've been going on hikes, we're going to start camping, and like just getting him outside and being in the mountains because we have it. But it's like, I want him to understand, like, dude, just because things are hard doesn't mean you get to stop thinking. Like, this is when you really need to start thinking, and this is where you need to work yourself out of problems. And so that's why I'm getting curious too, because like with what you're describing, like, and I'm curious too, because like I've noticed, especially I'd say probably in the last 6 months when you're teaching classes, I feel like you have a much deeper breadth of what you're covering. And I think out of everyone in the gym, the thing you do more so than anyone else is you experiment with new positions. Like if it's me, like I try, like when I'm rolling with someone, I'm outside passing, I'm usually trying to get to knee on belly to go to mount. My probably bread and butter would be like, hey, if I can get you in a head and arm choke, like I'm doing pretty good. I feel like Grant is going to the back, he's strangling, he's kind of playing that game. I feel like you bounce around, man. Like one day you're attacking, like I remember for a long time, you were relentlessly crushing the souls out of bodies with your knee on belly. And then you move to whatever was next, and then you're playing the leg entanglement game, and then you're attacking from the back, and then you're playing defense, and you're going from turtle, and you're wrestling up, and like you're constantly bouncing around. Like as you're exploring new things, and I think jiu-jitsu could be like an avenue for life, but like how are you thinking through some of those things? Is it the same thing? We're just breaking down position by position and small things, or are you just like to explore and just like the creative aspect of like what you're doing? Like what does that look like for you?
There's a few pieces to that. And thank you for saying you've enjoyed my classes and that I talk philosophically a little bit about how I think about martial arts and fighting. Sometimes I feel like I blabber on, but I want to share a little bit of the perspective and the philosophy of it, because your philosophy guides your actions and your actions produce results. And so taking care with your philosophy of training, your philosophy of life, is how you produce the actions that produce the results that you want. And you just keep in mind what your goal is. And that's what I want with my students in jiu-jitsu, and I'm so blessed to have the opportunity to teach, and so thankful for Brad for that, and for the for his teaching, and just the small part that I could play in anyone's life. If you ever are forced to defend yourself against someone who's attacking you, and I can have a little part of that. Like that is such an honor, and I'm so blessed to be like able to do that, and I want it to. So what I'm teaching, I want it to work, and I want it to be legit. And something that, came from Miyamoto Musashi from the Book of Five Rings is there's a few quotes that he has, and he talks about there was all these different sword styles in Japan. There's all these different schools: long sword, short sword, spear, weird other weapons, guns. They had guns back then. People were like devotees of all these different things. And archers, they were like only this type of weapon, only that type of weapon, and only this style, this stance, this narrow focus on like this one position. And said you really want to have a style of no style, and any position you're in is an opportunity for slashing, because they were fighting with swords, so they had the long sword and the short sword. And he also said, if you die, it's dishonorable to die without all of your weapons drawn. And so I think those two things in jiu-jitsu, like John Danaher said, and this is a continuation of the same philosophy, is that top, bottom, whatever position you're in, don't like have no preference. It doesn't matter where you are. You're just fighting from wherever. So like I've tried to incorporate that, and you have to spend time working on each individual pieces to get decent at different things, and you have your preferences. But I've really tried lately to just not care what position that I'm in, and that it's going to be an opportunity for me to win. Like the opportunity for slashing is, if I had a sword, wherever I'm at, I'm going to stab you with it from here. And I think the same thing a little bit in art, like people take a style or a technique and they, how do I say this? They make their philosophy and their pieces about the style or about the technique. They don't make the techniques in service to the philosophy or the style. And so I want to have whatever outcome I want. If I want to, you know, someday I want to do some bronze casting, like a lot of Western art that they did these amazing bronze castings. I want to do sculpture. I want to do more architecture things, design furniture, you know, and I've taken glassblowing, engraving, but it's because I wanted to engrave watches. So I learned how to engrave watches. I wanted to do what I wanted to do. I want to win. I want to produce the pieces that I want. And so I learned the techniques to just get the outcome out that I want. Same thing in jiu-jitsu is I want to win if a fight. I want to be able to come out on top of this thing. And so does that make sense what I'm saying? Is that don't make your jiu-jitsu in service to a narrow focus on one, like I need to be here to win, or I need to be able to do this one type of art. I've thought about that. What if I broke my hand and I couldn't blow glass? What if I went blind? What if I did something like that? I would start playing music again. I would paint. I would learn to do it with my other hand. I would not let anything break me. And it's my goal is that, because like a woman told me when I lived in Argentina when I was like 15, she'd been in Narcotics Anonymous for a long time and learned through that program and taken some of those teachings, and I wasn't really having problems with drugs at the time. I was smoking weed and doing psychedelics and stuff, but they made me go to these fucking meetings for some reason. So anyway, I'm hearing like with these like crack addicts and dudes are getting prostitutes and doing coke and they're drinking all day and all this like horrible stuff, and I was like, well, I am not having any of these problems. But
this is not my life.
Yeah, but I talked to her later and I was like, I got my girlfriend loves me, and I have my granddad, and he's there for me, and I have these people, and I was like, I'm not gonna become an addict, or I'm not gonna break down like this, because I've got my girlfriend, my granddad, people love me. And she said, well, your girlfriend will leave you, and your grandfather will die, and then what are you gonna do if you're leaning on all these other people? And so, relying on yourself, relying on your philosophy, relying on what you know and how you approach things, like that's all you could have control over. So you have to be very careful with what you learn and what you set out to accomplish with this. And so I do spend a lot of time thinking about this and trying to share that with my students in jiu-jitsu, is that, just keep in mind. How do you want to set yourself up for success? Is it for sport jiu-jitsu? Is it for self-defense? Do you want to fight in MMA? What do you want to do? Yeah.
That makes a ton of sense. And one thing you've kind of hit on a few different times, and I think when we went out, and I'm excited for this year and going hunting again, but even just the one day we spent out hunting, I think 2 hunting seasons ago, and just being out and, walking around and, seeing some deer and being an idiot and not having my gun working right and just having to bring an AR instead of my 308. But you've talked about nature and how even when you were talking about the source of the source, I think is how you said it, and how a lot of these famous artists that you go back and you look at, and I'd be curious as you're answering this, who your favorite artist is and why. But you've talked about nature so many times, what do you, and I know even another thing, man, I remember just not too long ago, you always surprise me with how well versed you are in so many different things, because you were talking not too long ago about some of the stuff that was happening politically with what they were doing with snatching up public land, and just how that's been changing the dynamics of what people have access to. And so I feel like nature has been such a big part of who you are and some of the lessons you've learned, and how do you see that influencing your own life? And then how do you see that as far as when you are kind of drawing some of again, I know you don't like the word inspiration, but I don't know, I feel like you just have referenced nature multiple times, and I know from our conversations it always sounds like it's something that's super important to you.
Yeah, I think that just goes back to Granddad and growing up on the ranch. I mean, he was so connected, because he's so connected with the environment, with the grass, with the land, with the water, with the trees, with what's happening. Because when you're raising cattle on grassland, like in eastern Montana, it gets about 13 inches of rain, annual rainfall. So very little. So it's when the original Homestead Act was passed in the late 1800s, people moved out there to homesteaded. They moved the Native Americans to the reservations, and they were given land. You could get half a section if you were single, I think like 180 acres, or if you were married, it was a full section, like 360 acres, I believe. And so it's quite a bit of land. And people were basically told that, you know, these were poor immigrants and settlers from Europe, from the East Coast, a lot of Polish, Irish, people like that had moved out here, and they were given this land, and they were told, like, you know, you can farm, you can grow crops, you can feed your family, you can live here, you know, you'll be able to make it and grow potatoes or whatever you want to do. And that's like in a place where you can farm, like, yeah, that's plenty of land to feed your family on. But come out to somewhere like Montana, you're not growing enough food especially without modern technology, without greenhouses and watering systems and wells and pumps and like power. They had no electricity. There was nothing. There was like a little tiny cabin and what you could do with your hands and your axe and your shovel and your mule. And so these people starved out. The only thing that grows there is grass. And all of these native grass species that were evolved with the bison, they evolved to be very rich in nutrients and protein, and like the grass that grows in the Midwest, very tall, green, bright green grass, but a cow will starve on it because it doesn't have the nutrient density that like these brome grass, crested wheat, blue bunch, these like western native grasses have, and they grow in this environment. And so understanding that we are part of this cycle of life and death, and we have our cattle, everything was, you know, you're just exposed to nature. We're outside, we're, you know, the cattle are harvesting the grass, and there's magical animals that turn this like semi-desert grassland into protein that we can eat, that we can live on as humans. We can't eat grass, and there's nothing else that you can grow there. So this relationship that we have with the public land, because we are fortunate enough, we get a really good deal for leasing grazing land as part of the multi-use purpose of national forest land for recreation, for grazing, for mineral development and logging. And so all of those things we get to share, and we are so dependent on it, and we're so lucky to have that here in Montana. And as I grew up with seeing cattle give birth and die, and sometimes, you know, you have to put them down sometimes. We perform a lot of field veterinary procedures. Sometimes you have to help heifers calve. You're so connected with just like the life cycles of lots of different animals. And I was so lucky to have grown up like immersed in that, and just understanding that we were part of that. And human society is getting divorced from our relationship as animals. We are mammals or animals, or just like, you know, all these other creatures in so many ways. And so that part of my upbringing has influenced my just approach to everything, is that I have a huge respect for, you know, it's kind of funny to call it nature, because it's just what, like, you mean reality? Like life outside, the world? Anything outside of like the door where we're in our little box right now. So yeah, it's like nature and all those things it's a huge part, and I just trying to display and connect with some of the beauty that's out there, and some of the meaningful things to me that I love, and just be a little part of sharing that, and like expressing that, and connecting people with that.
I think I don't know, as we kind of start wrapping up, man, like this is going great, and I'm just curious, man, because I've seen you, like we were talking about, like I've seen you grow up, but like I've seen you like go from a young man to like a husband, a father, like a man with real responsibilities, and I've seen how that's caused you to grow. You know, just some of the things we talk about, just like of being prepared to take care of our families no matter what. And like, I guess, what are you, most excited for as far as Remy as he's getting older? Like, what do you look forward to most? What are you excited to share with him? And like, I guess what are you looking forward to as a dad?
Oh man, like so many of the things that my dad and my grandfather were there to teach me. I mean, it's just your son. How old is Lincoln now? He's
almost
7?
eight. He's almost eight. Yeah, be 8 in a month.
Yeah, so like the older they get, he's only 2 now. So like a lot of the fun dad stuff we're not getting into that yet. But it's like it's coming, and that I'm just looking forward to all that. It's like, what a gift to get to show this little person and how to take care of himself and just like go around and do cool shit. I don't know, like whatever he's into and he likes to do, there's going to be certain things that aren't negotiable. He's going to know how to ride, he's going to know how to shoot, he's going to know how to fight, and at least know how to read. But that's pretty much like I want to set him up with that and like try to help him out and just encourage him to just be confident, be a person, do what he wants to do. So.
I'm excited for him because I feel like that's I think it was you in our little group chat with me, you and Derek on Instagram, where I think it was you who sent the reel that was like, be a man, carry a gun, was that you who sent that? Yeah. I love that, dude. I showed Katie, I was like, this is my life right here. Like, work too much, don't sleep enough or whatever it was. And like,
drink lots of coffee.
Something like that. And, but I think that's kind of what I've been really excited for. I mean, you strike such a good balance of being like the same guy who, like you're just talking about, like has all these interesting experiences and doing like psychedelics and growing up and how that shaped you, to now being like a dad who's like just trying. I think you're a great dad, man. Like I can tell you love Remy so much. I can tell like this. Thanks, you're so committed to Sequoia and your family and just what you guys are doing. That's what I think people need more of, and that's why I was like really, really excited to have you come and talk, just because I think that like what I want people to see is that like on this podcast is that like success isn't like, oh, this is what it looks like to be successful. Like we didn't really go into this, but one of the things I talk to a lot of people about is that there's this book that's called 10X is easier than 2X. I end up referencing it pretty much every podcast, but the whole idea is that like you right now are at someone's 10X. There's someone out there who maybe, like who could hear this and be like, just getting into glass blowing, is like, man, if I could have a business that I could just feed myself and I could glass blow and I could be an artist and I didn't have to sit in this stupid fucking class and I didn't have to do all this dumb shit I don't want to do, like that'd be great. And so I want people to have the opportunity to see, because I think sometimes we see like these podcasts where it's like, oh, there's these multi-bazillionaires and this is what success looks like, and it's like, dude, that's just like fake for most people. It's not real life. You don't
even need that. There's a lot of musicians streaming music online that like, the one guy broke it down. He's a guitar player I follow, and he gets, he's built up over the years where he has an average of 1,000 streams per day, which in a world of 8 billion people or however many up to now is
tiny.
Not many. It's not much. And from that, he sells a few records. He does a few shows, mostly just streams music online. And he makes like 40-50 grand a year.
God bless
playing
America.
His guitar. And that's not, he doesn't have he's not the biggest piece of the pie, but he's living his life with his art, and that's just,
that's
it's
so awesome.
Totally doable. And there's nothing wrong with having other jobs and like just living your life however you want, you get to do it.
I want people to see that too, that it's not like a zero-sum game. Like, it's not like there's this set pie. Like, we talk about in our office, the hardest we want to work for any one client is like, if we had a tree of like apples, the hardest we want to work for anything is walk up to a tree and take a broom and like, all right, it fell out. If we have to like get a ladder out and we have to chase it, we have to climb to the top of the tree. Oh, but it's the perfect piece of fruit. There's an unlimited number of trees. Like, I don't care. Like, and I want people to understand that it's like, there's so much opportunity with, like, as much as there's challenges in America, like
you're saying, trying to get a new client. You mean?
Yeah.
Like trying to. Like you're grasping it. Like
we want to work. We work hard for what we get, but like I'm not killing myself for any one client. Like I'm not like the hardest I want to work is like, hey, we're shaking the tree up, we're hitting it, like we're trying, but like I'm not going to go get a ladder to climb to the top of this tree because there's this perfect piece of fruit up there. What I'm going to say is like, there's probably a piece of fruit just as good on the tree right next to me, And so like, just understanding for people out there that like, you don't have to like, I think a lot of people in money, like that's the one thing that I've been very fortunate is like, I have done thousands and thousands of client meetings and talked to thousands. Like we currently have over 700 household, about 1,100 like different accounts. And you have to imagine to get 700 people to say yes, how many thousands of people I had to talk to that said no. You know?
Yeah.
It's an insane amount. You know, especially when I was earlier on, I was not like now I do pretty good, and it's pretty rare that people don't move forward. But you know, early on, like people said no as often as they said yes, if not more. And so what I've learned is just that very few people ever really want to retire. Most people, they just don't want to have to work. They want to be in a position where they don't have to work, but they get to choose to. And when people can find that right vehicle that makes them happy, whatever their glass blowing is for them, like then it takes off a lot of pressure, because for me, I realize like I'm loving what I'm doing right now. I'm having so much fun with it, and I'm not worried about like, oh, I have to work really hard so one day I can retire. Like I'm understanding like there's a good chance I'm going to work for as long as I possibly can. And that takes off a lot of pressure where it's like, oh, I have to work today because like, this, it's like, well, yeah, you got to pay your bills and all that. But at the end of the day, if like, once you solve that problem and you're able to live and save a little and do things responsibly, like if you're enjoying what you're doing, you're probably going to do it for as long as you can, you know? And so that's one thing I want people to see on these podcasts too, is that looks different for everyone. And I think by taking some time to think through things and really figure out like what's important for us as individuals, people can just kind of make that happen for them the way they want it to versus like what society is telling them they should be doing. So I just really, I don't know. Anyways.
Yeah, like Granddad, man, he was 93 when he died, and until he got cancer and he couldn't physically go ride and work, he rode his horse, he fixed fence, he worked on his ranch, he did something every day, and he didn't, because he liked it, because he wanted to. He didn't want to stop. And building something, being a part of something that you want to continue doing, and then having the ability to be generous and to be, you know, do things for your family and things like that. That was what the money was for him, that he was able to save and that he was able to have was not a ton, but he didn't need too much. He just was able to keep doing what he loved and then and be generous to people, and that's, you know, that's a good way to go about it, I think. Like have something worth continuing doing.
Yeah. Well, we've been going for it's already almost about 2 hours. I don't know if I had any other questions. Everything that I wanted to hit on, I think we did. And Josie, I don't know if you have any questions. I do what I always do, and I took over.
That's okay.
Sorry.
I think it worked out.
No, I think so as well. But man, thank you so much, Sam, for coming on and talking. And you know, just as we're wrapping up, tell people if they wanted to check out your art or how they could see what you're doing, what's the easiest way they could find you. We'll put all that stuff in the descriptions as well. But yeah, if someone wanted to check out what you're doing, how do they find you?
Yeah, just Alderson Studios on Instagram or aldersonstudios.com, my little website. And yeah, thank you guys for having me. It's fun. Enjoyed talking with you guys.
Yeah, man. Thank you very much. All right. Well, hey, until next time, guys, thank you for joining us. We'll catch you next week. Take care.